this video we're going to look at the selection and placement of appropriate protection, be that nuts, hexes or camming devices. A nut is a tapered metal wedge designed to be fitted into a crack with an obvious narrowing or constriction. It has a swaged metal cable that allows it to be attached to a carabiner. The whole unit is rated to 12 kilonewtons in terms of how much dynamic load I could put onto it. That translates as well over 1,000 kilograms of static mass that I could hang from this. When deciding where to place a nut, I'm looking for a section of crack with a narrowing or a tapering, and preferably I'd want something that looks exactly the same size and shape as one of my nuts. I can hold the nuts up against the crack to see which one I think is going to best fit it. Selecting a nut, I'm going to place it with a little care and precision. Once I've found a point where I seem to get a good fit, I'll put a little load on it, and then once I'm happy I'll give it a final jerk to seat it. Things which you should consider when placing a nut include the direction in which you expect it to be loaded. This nut is well placed for a downwards pull and would be an ideal placement for a piece of leader place protection where the leader might fall past it. We also want to consider things like how much metal we have in contact with the rock. The more metal touching the rock, the stronger the placement would be. When it comes to removing gear as a second, the first thing I'm going to do is try and find the comfortable position that hopefully my leader used to place the gear from. Once I'm in that position, I'll take a good look at the placement, and this is where understanding a little bit about how gear is placed is going to make it easier for me to remove this nut. I'm going to look at it, a nut goes into a constriction. If there's a wide part that I can obviously push the nut back into, that's where I want to go to take it out. I may just be able to do this by hand. A little flick and it's hand removed. That's nice and straightforward, but it doesn't always work like that. If I can't loosen it off straight away, I'll take my nut key out and I'm going to give it a few taps back into the widest part of the crack. Once I've seen it start to move, I'll put my nut key away back onto my harness. And out comes the nut. If I unclip the extender from the rope at this stage, it would be all too easy for me to drop extender and nut together. I can avoid that by taking the carabiner at this end of the extender, clipping it onto my harness, and only now do I remove the other end from the rope. In this way there's much less chance of me dropping anything. Spring-loading camming devices have 3 or 4 lobes on the end. By pulling on this trigger, I can vary the diameter of the head of the unit to make it fit different sizes of cracks. The unit works by expressing force outwards. The more force that's put down along the stem, the more the cams expand across the crack. Obviously you need solid rock, but also clean rock will help. Placing a cam in a dirty crack might be quite ineffective. Camming units are designed to be placed in parallel-sided cracks. If I look at the range of movement of the cam between its widest point of expansion and its narrowest, I'd like to pick a point around the midway mark. I can present the cam at the crack, and if it manages to fill it neatly at that midpoint, I'm happy I've got the right size placement. It's important that I consider where the loading is going to come onto the cam from. In this case I've turned the stem down to take a downwards pull. If I fail to do that, it's possible that suddenly loading the cam will cause it to move into a different part of the crack, which might make it impossible to retrieve, or even move into a wider section of crack where the cam would fail to operate properly and pull out. With small cams like this, there's an added complication. The range of movement of the cam is quite small. This means the difference between the cam at its widest and its narrowest is quite difficult to see. Finding the midpoint in between it can also pose problems. If you lose track of where that midpoint is, it's easy to push the cam too far into a crack, at which point you wouldn't be able to make it any smaller to recover it. Given the expense of these camming units, that's not something you want to do on a regular basis. When it comes to removing a cam, I have to be careful not to push it any further into the crack. So I'll just place my thumb on the end of the stem and then squeeze and draw back towards me. What I have to avoid is any force into the crack. I might not be able to get it back if I push it in too deeply. A hex is a development of an engineering nut, which was something that early climbers used to protect their climbs. Over time, climbers have discovered that by altering the length of the sizes and making them all different, and even by putting some curves or scallops on those surfaces, they can get a very effective unit as a piece of passive protection. Hexes work well in cracks which don't taper quite as much as those where you would expect to place a large nut. When I place a hex in a crack like this, the fact that its sides are all different lengths enables it to set up a camming motion. If you look when I place force onto the sling, you can see the sling is trying to straighten itself and actually cam the hex into place in the crack, pressing against the sides and giving the placement security. A hex can be removed in a similar manner to a nut, either with a good flick to loosen it off first, or using my nut key.